Welcome to Two Angry Men, the newest podcast with Los Angeles Magazine's own Mark Geragos and TMZ's Harvey Levin, where the two get together and talk about the biggest legal stories of the day. Enjoy.
There's no minors here. There's no celebrity sex tapes. You can't just say these things about our client. We will fight back. Everybody thinks it's open season and it's not.
Welcome to the Two Angry Men podcast. I am a flu-recovering Harvey Levin.
Hey, I'm Mark Geragos. That so far does not sound like Harvey Levin. I feel bad for you, Harvey.
No, I'm okay. I'm okay. I'm on the upswing.
Okay.
So we are going to bring in your daughter, who is an incredibly accomplished lawyer who is also representing Diddy. And I cannot wait to talk to her. Cannot wait.
Oh, talent skips a generation. She inherited from my father, her grandfather, and her firm. They're really killing it. They're maybe a year old, and their two clients, in no particular order, are Diddy and a young man named Luigi, who seems to have quite a bit of support. You know who Luigi is?
That's the Mangione guy that I believe. Yes, I know.
The first thing I associated with.
So listen, I can't wait to talk to her. But before we do, I think we have to talk about the developments since we interviewed Eric and Lyle Menendez.
Well, there was a lot of people who listened to that podcast, obviously, and because it was the first time they've talked for a long time. And I think the universal takeaway that I got, at least, and by the way, if a client of mine does something that people don't like, trust me, I hear about it. But I almost universally had people telling me that they really was mind-opening or awakening to them in terms of the depths of introspection and self-awareness and kind of remorse and things of that nature. I don't know if you agree. I haven't talked to you about it.
Well, we haven't talked, but you did say to me something. I never look at the comments. I just don't, because usually, everybody goes negative in comments. And you had mentioned to me a couple of days after we did it to look at the comments. I was stunned. I have never seen anything like that. There were hundreds and hundreds of comments, and everyone was positive. I've never seen anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to slam TMZ since that's the platform we're on. But it tends to tilt hater. And I'm with you. I scrolled some of the comments because I usually look for snark or good humor. I mean, the ones that are, go die, go do this or that. Anybody can do that. But, sometimes you get some good snark and good humor. These were serious. The brothers actually resonated with people at a level where people were not snarky, but it really was eye-opening, I guess, for lack of a better term.
No, it was. It was. Now, look. A couple of days after the podcast dropped, Gavin Newsom did something that really shocked me, that he is now asking the parole board to do an assessment of Eric and Lyle. And I thought he was going to wait until the judge decided on the resentencing, which is next month. But it seems like he accelerated this. We are told from people inside the governor's office that you had discussions. Anything you can talk about?
No, but I will tell you this: the California has a very robust process, but it has ebbed and flowed like everything else in the criminal justice system. This is potentially a watershed moment for what is happening in the criminal justice system. I'm very anxious to be part of it. I'm very anxious to watch it play out. There's some really good work that gets done at this level for these kinds of things. And I think we talked about this, or we touched about this, if not in connection with the brothers, but in something else. What people don't realize is that, lock them up, lock them up, lock them up, kind of that 90s mantra. that's great, but 90% of those people are going to get back out. And they're clearly LWOPs, a life without parole. But at a certain point, if people are going to get out, you would like to have some kind of a degree or confidence that they're not going to reoffend. And I think that's what the governor is leaning into. I applaud him for it. And by the way, I'm somebody who has been at odds with the governor at certain points. So when he calls him right, I want to be the first one to give him some kudos for it. And he clearly got this one right. Since we've got Tenny in the wings, we'll talk to her. Maybe next week we can talk more about Nathan Hochman. But I'll reserve fire on that.
Okay. Well, let me give you my take. Tell me if I'm right or wrong here.
Okay.
Seems to me resentencing is way less important now, because even if they got resentenced, it would mean the parole board would then decide whether they would be eligible for parole, and it still goes to the governor's desk. So as long as it has to go to the governor's desk, the governor has now short-circuited the whole thing by saying, I want it anyway, regardless of what the judge does.
Yeah, and I think it's a fair statement that it became political, and this is a good way to take the politics out of it. I mean, there is a certain degree of irony that I have been arguing, and Cliff Gardner, my very able, I tease Cliff a lot, Harvey, not as much as I tease you,
Yeah.
but Cliff is probably the appellate lawyer of his generation. And Cliff and I were kind of remarking on the fact that we've been arguing for 2 years now on the writ of habeas corpus, that basically what you had was a second trial that was driven by the politics in the DA's office in the 90s. Fast forward to now in 2025, and there is a compelling argument that politics, whether you're Hochman or whether you're Gascon, they both were saying the other was playing politics with this. So it's ironic, I suppose, that 30 years later, the more things change, the more they stay the same.
Yeah. We're going to bring Tenny in a minute, but just one more thing. I'm going to give you a prediction. Based on what Gavin Newsom did last week with Eric and Lyle, I think the DA, Hochman, is not going to take any position on resentencing. I think he's just going to say, we have no position on it. Because I don't think he's going to oppose it, because it's already going to the governor. And it doesn't sound like he's going to support it. So I think he's going to have no opinion on it.
Normally, I would engage with you, but if I did, or if I bet you I would have information, it would be unfair. It would be insider trading on. It would be a 10b-5 violation on the media. So
okay, well, you didn't laugh at me.
I did not laugh at you, and it does not take a lot to get me to laugh at you.
Fair enough.
Okay,
let's pivot. Diddy is so interesting to me. We've done 3 documentaries here at TMZ on the case, and a lot of it has to do with the prosecution side. We're now doing a 4th documentary, specifically on the defense, because I think we're at a point where everybody kind of thinks he's just going to go into the court and beg for mercy and not mount a defense. And that's not the case. And I think, it reminds me, Mark, of O.J. Simpson. It reminds me, to some extent, of the Rodney King case, where everybody was so primed to think one way that they were shocked when there was a defense. And I feel the same thing is coming with Diddy.
Look, I could not agree with you more. And this is without talking to Tenny, without having any perspective that's from the inside, but I read all of the filings, the public filings, because I find them compelling. I mean, there's you want to talk about appellate lawyers of their generation on the East Coast, Alexandra Shapiro. Tenny will laugh. I'm such a fanboy of Alexandra, who is on the team. I can't tell you, and her writing is so spectacular. If you're a lawyer and you're watching this, or if you're a law student, you should read, because everything that she produces is phenomenal. And the public filings really are at odds with the public perception of this case. And that's why it's fascinating to have Teny on here. But it's also, you got to navigate a couple of things, and we'll talk about it on the other side after we speak with her.
Yeah, well, let's bring her in. Teny Geragos, welcome to the Two Angry Men podcast.
Thank you for having me. And I love the name.
Doesn't it fit?
It really does.
Especially your dad.
It's really great. Like, he was meant to have a podcast named Two Angry Men.
I think so. And I'm glad to be the second angry man.
It's great.
Hey,
I have to take issue with something you said, though, which is
please.
that you did a few documentaries all about the prosecution's side, because I think that the public and the media have gotten nearly every fact wrong about what the prosecution's case is here. So I just want to take one issue with that. You know, there's no minors, there's no celebrity sex tapes. You know, the civil lawsuits here are not driving the allegations that we're defending against. But it is driving the vitriol against him in the media.
You know, I'm going to highlight something because this one drives me crazy because I read what the prosecution files and I read the indictment. And if you read the indictment, there's no allegation of sex with minors. There's no allegations of A-list celebrities. There are, the new superseding indictment lists 3 so-called victims. I like to call them complaining witnesses. But isn't that right, Teny?
No, that's absolutely right. There's no minors here. There's no celebrity sex tapes. There are a lot of stories in the media about lawsuits. There's been a flurry of lawsuits in the past 2 days because of an expiring statute, essentially, which is why you've seen a lot of lawsuits in the past few days. But it's incredible here what I'm witnessing, which is that we're, at least I personally, like, what people ask me about and come up to me about are a lot of allegations that just have no basis in reality whatsoever.
I think part of it is people are confusing the civil cases with the criminal case, you know, because there are allegations in the civil cases. The celebrity sex tape is interesting because the U.S. attorney made a big deal in that press conference about videotapes. And this kind of created a life of its own, that they had seized videos of the freak-offs, and it kind of spun into who's on those tapes. And Hollywood became unusually silent. We usually hear an uproar with something like this, and we have barely heard a peep from Hollywood. And I think that's one of the reasons.
I'd like to address that. And I think there's one huge reason, and that's Tony Busby. Right after the indictment, he came out with a press conference with a 1-800 number behind him, threatening lawsuits against our client without having filed any. And we saw exactly how it played out, and we saw exactly why Hollywood went quiet. And that's because he was utilizing potential lawsuits against my client in order to get, to try to get, I should say, or what I believed happened actually did happen, but to try to get settlements from other people, because he basically leveraging potential lawsuits against them, or he would sue them. Of course, Jay-Z didn't fold, and look what happened. That case got dismissed, and now he's being sued for extortion in California. But everybody
not Jay-Z, but Tony Busby.
Right.
And you know, I think what you're saying, Harvey, is exactly right. Everyone went quiet because lawyers have utilized my client and the fact that he's incarcerated in order to try to leverage my client's unfortunate predicament, being in prison, leverage that in order to gain financial benefit. And they've done that. I think the first lawsuit was against a Marriott as well, and then against a Macy's. And so they're trying to utilize my client in order to get big payoffs elsewhere. And unfortunately, we live in a world where anybody can say anything on TikTok and on Instagram, and especially for clickbait, and nobody can believe that this case doesn't have celebrity sex tapes or minors. And so it leads them to think that the absence of evidence is evidence. And that's just an unfortunate thing. And it's just not true. So I felt compelled to, say that here. Civil lawyers.
It's funny.
Can I just jump in? I
Sure.
did an interview with Tony Busby for one of our documentaries, and he was very clear that he was targeting some celebrities and had sent demand letters out. And I even asked him, I said, it feels like the game here is pay up or we're going to publicize this in the form of a lawsuit and it will destroy your career and your life. And he embraced that and said, that's the drill. And certainly I asked him, have you done that yet? And the strong insinuation was he's gotten some settlements from celebrities. Are you getting that from your end?
I mean, I'm not on the civil team. I do only criminal. So I
Right.
actually don't know. What I've seen is Jay-Z who fought back and was like, I'm not going to take this extortion. I'm not going to take it. And then I don't know if you saw our filing this week, but we opposed his motion to appear what's called pro hoc vice. I don't know if you
Yeah, I
do
did
the
see
legal
that. I did see that.
Pro hoc vice, for those who don't understand, if you're not admitted in that particular court, it's the Latin term for please, by the grace of God, admit me so that I can practice here at the pleasure of the court.
What I don't understand is, and I've seen it before, but why would a civil lawyer insert himself in the criminal case?
That's what I was trying to say, Harvey, when you first said you did 2 documentaries about the criminal case. I have no understanding to think that any of this man's clients are part of the criminal case at all. So I have to make that very clear. Like, the public has gotten nearly every fact wrong about this because lawsuits are getting pushed out about minors that just have nothing to do with anything I'm defending against. And but civil lawyers who are bringing cases in the Southern District of New York, which is where Mr. Combs is defending himself against, fighting for his life in this district, he has the lawyers have every single incentive to bring a lawsuit there, to make allegations, to say that he's guilty in order to financially collect. And so that's exactly why he would be inserting himself in this very district that he's not even admitted in and has been denied admission to. So it's like really a remarkable fact. I can't imagine, as a lawyer and as a member of this bar, which takes its lawyers very, very seriously, filing something under my name when I'm not admitted. Like that, I'm very proud. Like, I got admitted the very first day of the Martin Shkreli trial by the judge who was overseeing the case because I couldn't appear unless I was admitted. It's like a very basic fact as a lawyer.
One of the things that struck me is there have been a couple of people who have sued and then withdrawn their lawsuits. It would seem to me that helps you ultimately, because what it telegraphs to prospective jurors is don't believe an allegation that is simply an allegation when you see some people withdrawing it. And I'm not in any way suggesting this is the way I feel about the overall case, because frankly, I don't know what all the evidence is on either side, but it would seem just the optics when certain people pull back, it helps you.
I think that's true, although I'll say, I should say I don't know. What I think it doesn't help us is that lawyers and plaintiffs will put out lawsuits without checking the facts, without even just doing basic due diligence as to the facts. And then because the media is so hungry for clickbait on anything Diddy related, whenever anybody's scrolling through their Instagram or their TikTok, they see that Diddy's been sued yet again for some terrible assault, sexual.
And part of the problem with these kinds of cases, because you've seen it, whether I could name 10 of them, but I don't want to damn anybody by painting them with the same brush. But people tend to say, if there's what you lack in quality, you make up for in quantity. And so if there's 100 suits, I've seen it when they said, well, there's 120 suits, there's 150 suits. what I keep coming back to, the one thing that just drives me crazy about this case is I remember watching on my friend Ashley Banfield's program back in September, a lawyer who sat there on that program and said, I have seen a tape. They're shopping the tape. It's going to drop any day from now. Mind you, this is September 2024, and it involves the biggest of the big celebrities in Hollywood. I remember that vividly. Well, September passes, October passes, November, December. We're in 2025. When this drops, it'll be March. Nothing has come out. Nothing at all.
To your point, and to Harvey's, she is one of the people who put a 100-page lawsuit together in the Southern District of New York before our client was ever arrested, and actually had to withdraw from that case because she questioned the own causes of action. That's what she told the judge. Causes of action. My own causes of actions are questionable, and that's why I had to withdraw. And then in order to obfuscate that, went on the news and said those things about our client that are just clearly false. And we've since sued her for defamation. You can't just say these things about our client. We will fight back. And everybody thinks it's open season, and it's not. You know,
Harvey, can I ask you, since we're going behind the curtain?
Can I just jump in and ask one thing? I hear you, and you know that when this goes to trial, the publicity, the media attention is supercharged. And what you're talking about is exponentially bigger. So is sequestering the jury on the table?
That's a great question. I'm not going to really comment on the criminal case or what's on the table. I will say this, which is it's actually, I grew up in kind of this media world and, you know, sequestered juries. Dad, I think Peterson had a sequestered jury during deliberations. Is that right?
Only during deliberations, which was my great frustration, because I said, if you're ever going to sequester, and take a look at the only really high profile recent acquittals were sequestered juries. Casey and Anthony,
right.
What's his name, who committed suicide? Yeah.
I believe. Also, people get their news now on their phone. What are you going to take everyone's phone away?
By the way, that may be the brave new world.
Yeah, but Harvey, I've got one question. I'm going to, you're pointing this direction. I'm going to point in your direction for a second. I know for a fact that when there are tapes or pictures or video, any kind of multimedia, one of the first places people go to is TMZ, right? I mean, I know you don't want to answer that.
Well, we have people contacting us all the time.
Every day.
Yeah.
You've got somebody that's it. How many, I'm going to put you on the spot. How many celebrity sex tapes have you seen that are from Diddy parties? How many?
None.
0. How many minors have come forward to say, hey, Harvey Levin, I'm going to sell you my story. I was a minor at a Diddy party.
Well, we don't get that, but you know that there have been civil lawsuits.
Correct. And you know why there's civil lawsuits? Because there's this thing called immunity, and immunity generally attaches, or litigation privilege generally attaches, and that cloaks them in the ability to just make wild, outlandish allegations untethered by reality and not be able to get sued. Well, we may be entering a whole new world on that. I mean, you take a look at what Trump has been doing with suing media outlets when they show it. CNN just got hit. I was talking with the lawyers down there who tried that case in Florida. They got hit by the shenanigans they pulled in Florida. Trump just amended a lawsuit. ABC paid him for the George Stephanopoulos. I think we're in a different world now. I think people are starting to realize maybe you just can't get away with this kind of stuff.
So, Tenny, are you saying that you guys are looking to file civil lawsuits where there are baseless claims?
We already have.
I know you have, but is this?
We've already filed several, and we continue to look into it every single day because what's going on here isn't right, and it's not right to think that yeah, exactly. I mean, we've filed several defamation lawsuits against documentaries that have come out about our client, by lawyers who are doing unethical things and defaming our client, individuals who are defaming our client. I mean, the rumors out there are vicious and they're false.
And you know what it reminds me of, and I've had this, when she says she's grown up around this, I mean, basically, I remember at one point people planning a bomb at the house and going crazy. And I remember during Peterson was one of the craziest times I've ever had. No matter what you told people about that case, it did not matter. It was just, I knew a boyfriend who was just like him, and therefore he must be guilty. I mean, that's what the default was.
So how do you avoid Peterson then? How do you avoid that problem in this case? Because it's similar.
Yeah, I agree. There is
it is similar. I have to say, like back then it was everywhere, and that was before cell phones there was no iPhone, there was no TikTok, there was no Instagram. But like going into the supermarket, all of the magazines, and I remember my mom would like look at the news every morning, scroll the news, it would be everywhere. It was, how do we avoid it? I mean, we're taking the steps we can. I think I do find solace that we have 12 jurors who they actually look at actual evidence that they test. They're able to test credibility. That's their job. We could go on about Peterson forever, but everyone always forgets the jury was out for like 2 weeks. And it wasn't until the foreperson was literally taken off the jury and somebody else was put on that there was a verdict within like 2 hours. So I really do believe in the jury process. I believe if we can find 12 people who actually test the allegations, then our client, has trust in that justice system.
One of the people I interviewed in one of the documentaries was your colleague, Mark Agnifilo. And he talked about race being an important part of this case. And it seems almost undeniable that it will become that. So does that become a front and center issue for you guys? Is it something that just sits in the back?
Wait a second. Remember 2 weeks ago where I jumped in when Brian Friedman was on here? Now I'm going to jump in when Tenny's on here. She's not answering that question.
Thank you very much.
Why can't we have a bad signal when we need one?
Yeah,
that's right.
God.
Yes. Bye, Tenny. Go.
No.
Thank you.
I want one more thing. Just an observation. I covered the Rodney King case. And I was part of a mistake made in journalism with that case, that there was a 91-second tape of Rodney King being beaten. And there was about 13 seconds where the beating was unrelenting, where you just saw these officers pounding on him. And it's what everybody in the media, and I was a local reporter at CBS, and myself included, we kept showing the 13 seconds for a year. When the trial came, the defense said, let us show you the other parts of the tape. And they weren't like a smoking gun, and they were subtle, but there were parts when the officers would move back and Rodney King might move toward them. And it was subtle, but it was stunning to them because they were so inculcated with the 13 seconds that the rest of it became so important to them that it was one of the reasons they found the officers not guilty, which stunned everybody. And I think it was a mistake.
That and the fact that the judge was Stanley Weisberg.
Well, I understand, but
by the way, do you know who Stanley Weisberg also presided over? What other case?
Menendez.
Yeah, okay.
I know, but
I think that's fascinating, Harvey. But I think that's what trials are. They provide context. Like the media tries to, especially now, make things clickbait. Like what can fit in a 1-slide Instagram or what can fit in a 30-second TikTok. But trials are context. Like this is going to be a long trial.
Well, that's kind of the point I'm making, which is that you haven't played your hand and everybody's made assumptions. In a way, it gives weight to the defense that you might not otherwise have if it wasn't all out there in the way it is. I'm just thinking in terms of strategy.
Thank you.
Well,
Do you want to
no,
your
I mean,
day job and come work with us?
no. I mean, it's just an observation.
No, it's true. I hear your point. No, I definitely hear your point. It is all out there. Everybody has opinions. Everybody feels something when you say his name. I think that's right. It's all out there. Everybody has thoughts. I mean, as I've said, the public has gotten nearly every single fact wrong. However, that's what a trial is for. And there will be context, and we will be able to put forward our defense.
How long do you think the trial is going to last?
I don't know. Let's see what happens at the pretrial conference. I think that's in March.
Okay, well, I know anything else I ask, Mark is going to object to.
I'm going to jump.
I give up.
By the way, Harvey, it's as we're taping this, you may have told me that you were up against a hard out in about 2 minutes. So.
Okay, Mark, you made your point.
And you might have been fibbing to me, Harvey.
You made your point. Tenny, we really, really appreciate you coming on so much.
Of course. Thanks for having me, you guys.
Thanks again.
Thanks, Tenny.
2 angry men. All right.
Two angry men.
Very angry.
So, okay, can I ask you?
Yes.
How much is race going to play a part of this?
I have said, and I know that this may or may not be controversial, but I believe that race determines virtually everything in the criminal justice system. And I know that's a bold statement, and I know it's a kind of expansive statement, but I think it does. I just think that there is so much about race. Go to I don't know, the last state prison or the last time you were at a state prison, for instance. I've been in a number of state prisons recently in the last year. If you take a look at the composition of the inmates in the state prison, it's stunning. Go into the criminal courts building in downtown LA. Go into Department 30, which is on the 5th floor, which is the arraignment court. It's kind of the feeder court for all of the felonies in Los Angeles County, serious felonies. Take a look at the composition, the racial composition. And that's it. You cannot tell me that racial composition, which is so out of whack with the population demographics, is because that racial composition commits disproportionately that amount of crime. It's just the way we criminalize, and that's unfortunate.
So I want to give you my take on something, and I want to see if you agree. I think maybe the most important thing in this trial is going to be picking a jury. And the way this jury is picked, the timing is really good for the defense in this sense. There has never been more distrust with institutions than in 2025, particularly the Justice Department and the FBI. On both sides, the left and the right have said that they target unfairly. And I think people are suspicious of institutions today in ways they never have been. And with that mindset going in, that may help the defense.
Well, it might, except the problem is if jurors are honest about that, and that's what you hope for. You hope that when you do what's called voir dire, which is speak the truth, and that you ask the questions of the jurors, you're hopeful that they will tell you the truth.
Yeah, but you also know the game.
Well, yeah, and I know exactly what ends up happening. What ends up happening is once you reach a certain critical mass in high-profile trials, there is always going to be, I've caught them in every single high-profile trial, what I call stealth jurors, somebody who's going to lie their way onto the jury for an agenda. And there's a variety of those agendas. I don't need to belabor them now, but that always worries me. In fact, I used to say, have a rule of thumb that if somebody wants to be on the jury, I generally don't want them, right? Because that automatically is suspicious to me. Right. Who wants to be on a jury? Although I will also tell jurors, and I do this all the time, next to military service or kind of the law enforcement front lines, there is no more valuable service that you can do as a citizen than jury service, because the one thing that separates us from tyranny, everybody can talk, we hear, speaking of, you're saying distrust, the only thing that really does separate us are jury trials. Jurors are the last kind of stop before you get to tyranny.
So how about this for a theory? That the defense tries to get the most diverse jury they can get from all walks of life, different races, just everything diverse. Because when you have a diverse group, it is much less likely you'll get unanimity. And if you get a hung jury, the defense then hears the entire case. So if it gets retried, they know everything the prosecution's going to do.
Well, look, there are social studies, there are kind of literature on the fact that the more diverse the jury, the better result you get. And when I say better, the fact that you do not come to a quick kind of prejudgment, that you actually, and I also have commented to juries on this, I've tried hundreds and hundreds of jury trials. They almost always, it's an amazing phenomena. Juries almost always come up with something that neither lawyer prosecuting or defending the case came up with. It's uncanny what happens when you put 12 people together who are doing the kind of hard work that needs to be done when they're back there deliberating.
Finally, I'm really interested in Tenny kind of charting your path. She watched you through all these trials, and it's a tough job. So how did you get her on board to do what you do, given, because I've known you forever, it's a really tough job, and you take a lot of heat. So how'd you get her on board for this?
She remembered, she comes, I wasn't kidding when I said before, she's the third generation. I mean, my father,
right.
I tell the joke all the time. My dad was admitted or started in the DA's office the same month I was conceived. And the first 13 years of my life, he was a DA, and I thought my first name was dumb and my middle name was shit, because he was kind of a hard-charging homicide prosecutor in the LA DA's office. And she obviously didn't know him then, but after he left in whatever year it was, 1969, 1970, he went into private practice, and I joined him in the early 80s. And she was born a decade later, and she grew up in watching the two of us start and build a firm, and it's kind of generational. Now, I hope that my father's father, who was a immigrant and a tailor, who used to say that shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves in 3 generations, which is, it always is the third generation.
Right.
So
it's really pretty remarkable, I got to say. Okay, so you're not going to answer my question about the governor. I can't get Tenny to answer questions about race.
And going back, I ordered Friedman not to answer your question.
And you ordered Friedman not to answer. So why are we doing this podcast together?
For some reason, I'm going to let you take a little victory lap here. We did the Blake Lively with the aforementioned Brian Friedman, and look what happened. The next day, I think Taylor Swift kind of distanced herself. I mean, almost immediately. We did the Wendy podcast,
right?
And if I'm not mistaken, within 36 hours, Wendy got kind of a reprieve. We did Menendez, and the governor acted. So we did Diddy. We'll see what happens with Diddy. It might be kind of a theme here that I know that there's a certain comedian who is already characterized.
I can say it. Bill Maher told me that this podcast is freeing aggrieved celebrities. Oh my gosh.
It's a pretty good line. I'm going to top that.
I hope that our next podcast, I have a voice back. I apologize to everybody who's listening. And I hope Mark is going to be much more open to me in the next podcast as well, because I just feel like I'm hitting brick walls.
Okay. You got it, Harvey. I'll be much more open. I'll be less shy, and I'll come out of my shell.
By the way, And I like the background because that white wall in LA is just driving me crazy.
I'll raise the game.
Yeah,
okay?
I mean, just look behind you. It's nice.
Yeah, it's a tribute to my son-in-law.
Okay. We will see you next week.
Thanks, Harvey.
Bye, Mark.